story behind the artifact, a great example of why and how story adds so much more to a thing. Without a story, a thing is a thing. It's the stories that the museum is after here, Amy.
That's right. This feature exhibit is called The Story Behind the Artifact, and we're taking out quite a few of our best artifacts with the best stories to tell people about the history of Nanaimo and also to give people an idea of the type of artifacts that we're looking for in our collection.
So it's one thing to have something that's old and cool, but without the story behind it, it's hard to engage with it. It's hard to associate with it.
It is, and we're a Nanaimo community museum, and so for us the most important stories are the Nanaimo stories.
Okay, now there is quite a story on the wall behind you. What is the story that's shown there?
So in behind us are pressed flowers and paintings that were done by Laura Planta in the 1920s through about the 1940s. A lot of people might recognize the Planta name, Planta Park, Planta Road in the Hammond Bay area. And Laura spent much of her spare time gathering plants. She would go up to Mount Benson, the Millstream, and preserve them. She did beautiful watercolors, and her husband was a big community supporter. He was a mayor, I think, 8 times.
Wow.
He was a senator. Unfortunately for him, in the 1930s, I believe, he was caught embezzling money from some of his clients. So he had to resign from his Senate seat and serve 2 years in jail.
Now that's a little bit of history that sort of dropped out of the story for many people, and it's part of your job to find that and information like that. How did you find out about that part of the story?
Well, I was tipped off to the problems that the senator had by Christine at the archives, and it took us actually quite a bit of digging here at the museum to find documents to support that story, but it is true.
Wow. Now another thing about the part of the exhibit that's on the wall behind us now is that some of that's displayed for the very first time.
That's right. We've had her paintings on display before, but we've never had the pressed flowers on display before.
What is it that intrigues you about those flowers? I'm wondering if all those flowers still exist, and it really takes you into the story because you can picture a time that maybe it didn't look so different looking down at a field and picking a flower. We do that today.
Yeah. I think that that's what intrigues people is you look at the pictures and the pressed flowers on the wall and you recognize some of them. Some of them, like you say, that we have in our collection, you can't find them in this area anymore. So it's an interesting way that history has been preserved of botany. Laura's work was really well respected in her time. She had exhibits at the Vancouver Art Gallery, and she also had exhibits at the Royal BC Museum.
It's fascinating. Thank you. We're going to be back with more from the story behind the artifact. But first, and up next, here's Todd Jones with the story behind 60 years of the Nanaimo Timbermen.